Hi, good morning and hello. My name is Magat Sheikh Saidi. I'm from class LO1 and my presentation will be about the American company, very loved, Mrs. Fields Cookies Incorporated. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, Mrs. Fields Original Cookies Incorporated is an American franchisor company that exists in the snack food industry. It operates solely through franchising retail stores, as it is one of the largest retail-based snack business of freshly baked cookies from their outlets. So their specialty being cookies and brownies, which they have targeted a larger market attraction, and they sell soft cookies and other variety of products like frozen yogurts. So apart from their desserts, their franchise stores are now counted over 300 in the United States and over 22 outlets outside of the United States globally. So they're very well known for operating through a gifts and branded retail business. So they entered many licensing arrangements and is currently headquartered in Broomfield, Colorado. So the company was founded by Debbie Fields, or Mrs. Fields, a well-known businesswoman in the late 70s. She opened her first store in Palo Alto, California, and it later bloomed and has since opened many stores throughout California and then later the rest of America. So her store consists of stall-based outlets before they expanded to smaller store-structured outlets. So her store consists of home-baked cookies with an attached kitchen. So employees are expected to bake the cookies before they start their shift. And their cookies have since garnered more attraction and popularity, innovating different recipe structures that are hard to manufacture if copied. So they require specifications on ingredients and how they are made, which to many larger firms can be seen as a goldmine of business model. So these ready-made cookies are also available with the backings of established investors. So the company has been bought in the 90s by a larger financial firm, which has further financed its operations up until the year 2024. So here are a few market entry strategies that are suitable and also can be seen done by the company itself. So the company, no brainer, is a franchising company as it's established itself as a renowned franchising brand. But it is by far the most competent and the most common way for them to get into the Malaysian market. It allows the company to leverage on local knowledge and reduce the risk of market entry by partnering with a local entrepreneur. It helps to lower the unnecessary risk and investments. As for the joint venture, it allows for a method for Mrs. Fields to enter the Malaysian market through partnering with local partners. This maneuver involves forming a partnership with an already established Malaysian company, whereby both parties share an ownership of the flagship stores as well as shouldering responsibilities equally. So by doing so, the financial burden and risk of market entry are shared among them so that the entry process becomes more manageable for them. Not only does it smoothen the process of entering the new market, it efficiently makes the capital investment and operational costs less difficult for both sides. So local partners may have also possessed enough infrastructure and network with suppliers and distributors, so they don't have to stretch out any dime in order to distribute their cookies and manufacture them. So the direct investment is of course could be the third method identified with Mrs. Fields. So they could consider it as a direct investment where the company established wholly owned subsidiaries or company-owned stores in Malaysia. This approach involves a higher level of investment and risk, but it offers greater control over operations, brand management, and product quality. It allows Mrs. Fields to maintain full control over its brand image, product offerings, and customer experience. So this is particularly important for a premium brand like Mrs. Fields, where consistency and quality are key to maintaining brand awareness and brand loyalty. The long-term commitment to the market can be established by compensating with company-owned stores which signals a long-term investment and loyalty to the brand. So balancing brand credibility and consumer trust, it demonstrates that Mrs. Fields is invested in building a long-lasting presence in Malaysia, which the citizens and consumers could very well much love, because who doesn't love a long-lasting brand? Now moving on to the environmental analysis, PESTEL. So starting off with the political factors, Malaysia has government stability, whereby it relatively has a stable political environment, but in occasion, it changes in government policies. Leadership can affect everyday business operations. So management and business owners must always be up to date and prepared in facing these circumstances. It is vital for Mrs. Field to stay informed about any shifts in policies that could impact the food and beverage industry. As for the economical factor, there's an economic growth which is stable and healthy. Malaysia has a growing economy with a rising middle class, which increases disposable income consumer spending. So what this means is that it creates a favorable environment for Mrs. Fields, as more consumers are likely to purchase consumable products like cookies. The exchange rates between Malaysian ringgit and the US dollar could impact the cost of importing products, but if they rectify this by investing in the machinery and source the ingredients locally for alternatives, Mrs. Field should be prepared to adjust pricing strategies accordingly. So there's no problem in that area. Moving on to the social factors, there's cultural preferences in a country with diverse races like Malaysia. So Malaysia is one of the world's most diverse countries, but it's also a multicultural society with diverse tastes as diversely as the races there are. So their dietary preferences may also vary accordingly to their own individual needs, apart from their religious needs and their ethnic needs. So Mrs. Fields may need to adapt to its product offerings to cater to local tastes and become innovative with how their products are marketed. So they can also consider to expand their products line accordingly to the country's signature tastes, as other franchise foods chain like McDonald's and KFC have done. So Malaysia has a young population with a median age of around people being in their 30s, but this proves as a benefit because it opens up a channel where they are receptive to international brands and trends. As for on what we can identify from the pastels and the market entry analysis, so the best way for Mrs. Fields to get into the Malaysian market is by franchising, because a franchise model can minimize the risk of associated with foreign direct investment. So local franchises are more familiar with the regulatory landscape, including food safety and halal certification, which are crucial for operating in Malaysia. So economically speaking, Malaysia's growing middle class with increasing disposable income creates a favorable environment. So a franchise model allows Mrs. Fields to tap into this new market by partnering with local entrepreneurs because they understand how consumers spend their money and can effectively target high demand urban areas like in Kuala Lumpur per se, Mont Kiara or Cheras or Bangsa. So socially understanding and adapting to Malaysia's diverse cultural presence is key success as being an international business. They are better to position customized product offerings to suit Malaysian taste and palate. So by introducing local flavors and less sweet options, they can expand their target demographic beyond just young adults. So Malaysia is a country with high rate of health awareness, so this should Alright, so the technological factors is that there's e-commerce. So leveraging on Malaysia's high internet penetration and growing e-commerce sector could be crucial for Mrs. Fields. Developing an online ordering and delivery platform could help reach a broader audience. By leveraging on the high payment method with using cards, QRs, Malaysians are more aware of these easy access to payment methods that could very well benefit Mrs. Fields if they know how to attract their consumers properly. So lastly is the legal factors. The food and safety regulations in Malaysia, as I've said before, is very strict, as the Malaysian Strict Code of Food and Safety Regulations, which may include requirements for labeling, ingredient sourcing, and hygienic standards. Mrs. Field must ensure full compliance with these laws to avoid penalties and protect its brand reputation. As Malaysians, we practice a conscious right to consume and know what we consume on a daily basis. By protecting intellectual properties like recipes and branding is also very crucial to the company, so that they must ensure that its trademarks and patents are properly licensed and registered. Lastly is environmental factors. So sustainability practices, there is also an increasing awareness of environmental sustainability in Malaysia. So people are preferring to choose for more eco-friendly approaches and packaging when it comes to what they consume, especially packed food. So plastic bags may not be necessarily the best option, but for a cookie business like Mrs. Fields, paper bags are the way to go, and people would very much love eating their cookies on the go. So they don't have to pack it in plastic bags, or in such cases, there's companies out there that packages their cookies in plastic containers, which may not very well be healthy or recyclable. So paper bags, boxes, it's the way to go. Lastly is the implementation plan. So I've come up with 5 steps in order for Mrs. Fields to implement themselves and penetrate this new market. So the first step being the market research and feasibility study, expected to be the first 3 months of the year. So the first step is to conduct a comprehensive market research before entering the new market. This phase typically involves analyzing consumer preferences as well as understanding the competitive landscape of the country's food and beverage industry. So by identifying potential locations to set up store, it is very crucial to start off the business by setting up a physical store where people can engage with the business directly. So high concentrated areas like Kuala Lumpur, Penang Island, Malacca, as well as Johor Bahru comes to mind when it comes to making a choice for their first brick and mortar business location. So moving on to the franchise development and legal setup, which is expected to be around month 4 to 6, following the research phase. During this period, Mrs. Field must formalize franchise agreements, which helps to ensure that it is in compliance with Malaysian laws, including food and safety regulations. So securing trademarks and other intellectual property rights in Malaysia is also vital to protect the brand. And next is the franchise recruitment training. So the third phase focuses more on recruitment and training. So Mrs. Field is a very big company and they're also very well known in the States. But by utilizing digital platforms to connect with trainees directly across the countries and across the world, with trainees, after a selection and interview process, the new hires will undergo a training program, which are designed to initiate them into the company's working environment. So moving on to number 4, which is the pilot franchise launch and initial operations. So after the recruitment and training process, the next obvious step is to launch a pilot franchise outlet. So this outlet will serve as a test case for the franchise model in Malaysia, which it will allow Mrs. Field to identify any operational challenges and make necessary adjustments. And number 5, lastly, is the full-scale rollout ongoing support. So months 13 to 24 and beyond. So if the pilot launch is successful, Mrs. Fields can proceed with a full-scale rollout of franchise outlets across Malaysia. So it focuses more on outlets in areas where high demand during the initial research phase will require an ongoing support for franchises. So it includes marketing assistance and continuous training to manage them. Yeah.